Hi guys, thanks for checking out the 8020 BIM channel here today. Very quickly, I thought I'd put together an exercise for people to understand how phasing works in Revit. And I thought, what better way of doing it than work through a very simplified example which can be applied regardless of the scale of complexity that you come across in your own projects. So what we have is we have an existing layout, as you can see here. This is essentially a very basic block of the way the majority of industrial manufacturing buildings are constructed. They have an administration area, an R&D, QC, QA area, a production space, and a warehouse. And what's very typical of this type of building is you create the initial building in the first instance, and then there is a requirement from the client to up production very rapidly. So they want to expand the footprint of the building, and typically they have a certain amount of capital for certain periods of time, be it per quarter or per annum, and they will want to break the building up into phases for the expansion. So we're going to replicate this in this example so that you can kind of understand it in terms of a real world application. So the client in this instance wants to extend their warehousing. They want to maintain the existing warehouse, and they want to basically bolt on another warehouse of the exact same size and shape. They want to add an additional door into the existing wall here, and they also want to add two kind of vision panels in through the wall so that you can see from one to the other. In the second phase then, they want to extend to the south of the building, as my cursor is showing now, and just off the admin, they want to introduce a small canteen to account for the increase of staffing numbers with the ramping up of production. And they also obviously want to increase the footprint of the production space. So we're going to work through this example, and what we're really going to try to do is aim for a final output as we see it. So this is what we're going to work towards in this video. So we have the existing, as I've shown previously, and then we have the phase one demolition and enabling works. And what this will show was basically the OPS being broken and the existing wall prior to the development of phase one. Then we're going to move into our phase one production drawing. So this can be ready for tender or IFC or review, you know yourself. And then following on from that, we're going to move from phase one through to phase two, where we're going to generate our enabling works drawing, our demolition drawing, and then obviously the final layout in phase two. So unlike CAD applications, the one thing we want to make sure we do is that we never actually copy out the view. So in CAD, historically, what you would do is you'd have your existing layout and you would, you'd have your existing layout and you would copy it across and you'd make your alterations and you'd sheet up both instances. You'd have your existing and you'd have your proposed phase. This is absolutely the one thing you do not want to do when you're organizing phases in Revit. First of all, you are removing the new building shape footprint, as you see it, the revised phase, from its geolocation. So it's no longer correctly located, so you cannot take spot coordinates or elevations or any of that information accurately off it. Secondly, what you're doing is you're actually creating a duplicate of all schedules. This wall now appears in the project twice. This door now appears in the project twice. The rooms now appear in the project twice. The idea of Revit is that you have one model environment and it's parametric. You make a change, all of your schedules update, all of that information is present. If you're suddenly creating duplicates information, then your pricing isn't going to be correct, your volumes aren't going to be correct, your tonnage isn't going to be correct. There's any given number of complications that come of this. So you have to walk away from the AutoCAD way of presenting phases, and you need to think of Revit as a means of appending timestamps to model geometry. So the first thing we're going to do to realize our final output is we are going to look at what phases we need to introduce. So as you can see on our drawings here, we have 5 drawings. We want to create each one of these. In our 5 drawings, we have the existing phase, phase 1 and phase 2. And as you can see on the drawing list here, we have existing phase 1 demolition works, phase 2 and phase 2 demolition works. So what we actually need to create are 3 phases altogether. We need our existing phase 1 and phase 2. So the first thing we do is we go into our Manage tab we go to our phases, and we will see typically when you create a new project, you have existing and new construction as shown. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to relabel this phase 1, and in the description we're going to say warehouse, and then we're going to insert after our phase 2, and this is going to be canteen and production increase. So there we have it. Very simply, we have our 3 phases now created and set up in the project. Next we have to look at our phase filters, and what I'm showing here are the typical phase filters that are in every Revit project that you start, unless you create a new template and you remove a few of them. What you really need to know in terms of the presentation of information and phases is there's only really 3 or 4 of these phase filters that you actually require, and anything outside of that is kind of overkill. So there's the show complete. That's great in 3D views when you have the final presentation of all the phases and you don't want to see the 3D geometry half shaded out with the existing phase and then the new phase popping as it should be presented. There's show demo and new. There's show new, there's show previous demo, previous and new, and then show previous and phase. So for the presentation of the drawings, what you really need is, if you are in phase 1, you want to show previous and new. That'll show the existing elements that have not been demolished and the phase 1. If you show previous and demolition and you're in phase 1, you will see the existing geometry and the demolition geometry only. You will not see any of the proposed geometry. So really, these 2 are the most powerful in terms of presentation and your show complete, and everything else is superfluous. There are times you may need them, but they're not really required from the actual phasing presentation for the most part. And then finally we have our graphic overrides. And our graphic overrides are basically the presentation of our lines in the projection, so as we face the line, and then our cut lines as we cut a section or we cut through the walls in the floor plan. So in this instance, straight off the bat, while we're here, I want to change the presentation of our demolished graphic overrides to red. And in our cut, I want to change it to red also. And in our patterns, so when we're cutting, we want to see a hatch pattern to better distinguish the demolished items from the existing. We're also going to set that to red. And I'm just going to set that to a diagonal 0.5. Perfect. So there we have it. There's our phase filters set up and our graphic override set up. So what this means now is essentially we can begin to start our proposed modeling. The way that the workflow is going to happen is you have your existing, you want to create your phase 1 first, and while creating your phase 1, your demolition data will be generated in the background, which then you just need to create a view to represent. So you don't actually have to worry too much about creating the demolished items. If you're creating the phase 1 correctly, the demolished items will be created alongside it, and then you just need to focus on the presentation of them in the aftermath. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to extend our warehouse here. So I'm going to select the door, the 3 walls surrounding it. I'm going to press CO for copy, and then I'm just going to copy from this inside wall to the outside wall there. Now straight away I have missed a step. The big problem is I'm an existing view here, and as you go downstairs and as you go down the list here, you will see that it shows existing here also. So we're going to undo that because that is an error. What we really want to do is we want to duplicate this view with detail, and we're going to call this view phase 1. I'm going to delete that existing view there. You can ignore that one. And when we have our phase 1 view set up here, what we need to do is make sure that under the phasing dialog in our properties tab, if the properties tab is not open, you can right click an object and press properties. But under our phase filter, we're going to show all temporarily, and then we're going to, under phase, we're going to press phase 1. So level 0, phase 1, phase 1. Now we can select the items that we wanted in order to create our new warehouse. And we're going to press CO. And we're going to copy them from there to there. Now it's saying I have overlapping walls. That's no problem. I'm just going to use the trim and extend. And I'm just going to trim our proposed walls back to the existing wall point. Now I'm actually just going to hide the elevations in view for a moment, as they're distracting. Okay, so here we have the footprint of our extension in plan here, and we want to introduce a door. So I'm going to press DR for the door, and then I'm going to place the door. Now, as you can see, that's not the door that I wanted to create. I want to actually match this door type here. So I am going to press match properties. I'm going to select the existing door, and I'm going to click the new door. I'm then going to use the align tool to align the center of them both. And then I'm going to select the door, and I'm going to press spacebar as many times as I need to flip the orientation. You can also use the flip orientation arrows here. Now, as you can see, because I'm showing all on the face filter, you can see the proposed objects, you can see the existing objects, but on the proposed door, you can actually see the demolition lines of the wall that was existing where we've placed this door. So you can begin to understand the presentation of this and how the phase filters are going to actually control what we see in the view itself. So I'm going to add two windows very quickly. I'm just going to use generic windows here. So I'm going to pick broad ones, and I'm going to set the head height to, that's fine, 2100, and I'm going to place them within the wall here. Now I could load vision panel specific families, but I'm just going to use the windows for the moment. Okay, and just to set these out correctly, I'm going to press DI for dimension, and I'm going to go from center to center on the doors, and I'm just going to pick the center point of the vision panels as well, and press EQ. That will make it equidistant between the centers of the doors. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to unconstrain. If you wanted to, you could leave them constrained, and that means if you were to change the location of this door, it will actually change the set out of the windows between the doors. I like to unconstrain because people coming behind me in the project, if it moves to another technician or another designer, they may not know what I've set out the constraints for, and if they make one alteration, they may not be aware of the effect that that alteration is having elsewhere. So I like to actually remove the constraints. So we're going to delete this, and we're going to unconstrain. So what we want to do now, because we have this set as level 0 phase 1, we want to change our phase filter, and we want to only show the previous and new. So you will see, as you look at this window here, when we change this to previous and new, the lines that represent the demolished blockwork from the existing wall disappear, and all you're seeing is the existing geometry and the proposed geometry. So now we need to detail this out to be represented as we have in this one here. So the first thing we're going to do very quickly is we're going to go DI for dimension. We're going to pick our wall faces, and in our individual reference, I'm going to pick entire wall. And I am going to pick openings, widths, and you'll see very quickly, this is a very, very quick way of setting out structural opes and windows, doors on a wall. So next we're going to press TG, and that's for tagging an item, and we're going to tag our proposed walls as such. And then we're going to press DI again, apologies, DI, and we're going to pick our entire wall with the same criteria as our previous one. But what we're actually not showing is the build up of this existing wall out here now. So what I want to do is I want to change that, and I want to press intersecting walls as well. And we'll go again. Sorry, apologies, intersecting walls, and we'll go again. And similarly, we're going to continue all the way around our proposed. Now, we don't have a tag associated to this wall here, so because this is the primary wall we're going to use throughout, I'm just going to set that tag under edit type. I'm going to go down, and under type mark I'm going to press A, and you will see that the tags, because they're developed with the type mark parameter, they will represent with the letter A. I'm then going to go around pressing TG for tag, and I'm just going to tag the doors and our vision panels accordingly. I made a mistake there. I tagged the existing door and I only want to see the proposed. So once we have the proposed door tags in place, we're going to change them to box as a better way of presenting them. And I'm going to turn off the leaders, and I'm just going to neaten up the location of them there. Similarly, with the vision panels, we're going to change that to boxed, and I'm going to turn off the leaders and just shift them with the arrow keys so they're better presented. You will also notice that we don't actually have any rooms in this new phase, and rooms can be a little bit tricky in phasing because they do not carry up through the phases. So as the project progresses from existing to phase 1 to phase 2, you will not have the existing rooms remain present in the phase 1 and phase 2. What you actually need to do is bring in the same rooms into that phase as well, so that you can schedule objects, let's say in warehouse 2 to warehouse 2 only in phase 2. And similarly, warehouse 1 will have different objects assigned between the existing phase and the proposed phase. So having a warehouse 1 that's consistent through the phases just doesn't work in terms of scheduling, and that's why it doesn't carry through. So what I like to do is to select the rooms from the previous phase in the rooms that have remained unchanged, and I press Ctrl C and I go to our phase 0, and under the paste dialog in the modify tab I go paste aligned to selected view, and you'll see the rooms came in, and then all I need to do is press RT and I can tag the rooms accordingly. Now you'll notice that we don't actually have a room assigned to our proposed phase 1 works yet, so I'm going to press RM to place the room. We placed room 5 now, and we're going to call this warehouse 2. Now, so that looks very representative of what we were aiming for proposed phase 1 initially. As you can see, they're pretty much replicas of one another, with exception of maybe a few of the tag designations. So we've achieved our phase 1 presentation of works, but what we haven't actually done is created a view that shows the demolition works. So we're going to do that now. So we're going to go back to the project, and under level 1 existing, level 0 existing, we're going to duplicate the view with detail. Then we are going to go under our phasing in the properties tab. We're going to change that down to phase 1, and as you can see, we can see all of phase 1 again. I'm going to hide in view the elevations because they're distracting. And under phase filter, this is how we present the demolition works. They do not need an independent time frame. They are part of phase 1. They are the phase 1 enabling works. These have to happen for phase 1 to be realized, and therefore they fit within the phase 1 model geometry. So under phase filter, we're going to assign previous and demo. So our phase 1 drawing shows previous and new, and that shows the existing and proposed phase. And our demolition drawing is going to show previous and demo, which is our existing phase, and the demolition works assigned to phase 1. So as you select it, you will see we have the presentation of our 3 openings in our wall. So we're going to press RT very quickly for room tag, and we're going to tag our phase 1 rooms, and I'm just going to hide the room that isn't actually presentable in the demolition phase. And as you can see, we're actually not getting the cut visibility from our styles that we assigned in the graphic overrides in our phasing. So we're going to go in and see if we can actually resolve that. So if you go to your Manage tab, go to Phases, we're going to go to Graphic Overrides, and you can see under the Demolish, I never actually assigned the pattern properly. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to press the red, the diagonal up at 0.5, but I never turned on visible. It has to be visible. And you press OK, apply, and you will see now you have a very clear designation of the areas that have to be removed. So I want to dimension out these opes. So I'm going to press DI, I'm going to make sure the entire walls are selected, and I'm going to make sure that our intersecting and our opening widths are selected, and we're going to press here. Now, this is something that happens with phasing, and it doesn't happen on the proposed works, but it does happen on the existing works, or the demolition works. It will not actually track to the OPEs that were created because it's not recognizing the object. It's not recognizing the wall as broken as such. It's just going to catch the existing door and the existing intersecting walls. So that quick way of dimensioning doesn't actually apply when you're showing your demolition drawings. So what you have to do in this instance is press DI. You need to turn off your auto dimension options, and you want to press individual references, and you actually need to manually go ahead and select your opening widths as such. And then if you have an existing wall type tag assigned to the existing walls, you can actually tag the parts of the walls that you're removing so the contractor better understands the construction of the elements he has to remove, and it'll enable him to price and understand the timeframes better of the demo works. So there we have it. Our goal initially was to set out and create our existing drawing, our phase 1 demolition works, and our phase 1 final layout, and we have done that now. So all we need to do in this instance is actually sheet up our new views. So the one thing I forgot to do up here is change the existing copy to our demolition. I'm going to call this phase 1 demolition, okay? So I'm going to shunt this over, and then I'm going to bring in our phase 1 demolition view. And as you can see, it'll align on the sheet to the existing plan. And then I'm going to bring in our phase 1 proposed. And as you can see, it aligns again. And there we have it, the presentation of our existing phase 1 and phase 2 works. Now, we need to go on from here and create our proposed canteen and increase the production space. So unlike the warehouse where we literally added on another warehouse, in this instance, the production space has to increase. So we need to remove a section of wall rather than just inputting an opening by a door or a window. So this can be a little trickier for some people to work their head around. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to approach this and keep it nice and simple. So we're going to go back to our previous model, and we're going to go into our phase 1 drawing. And here we are going to duplicate view with detailing. And we're going to change our phase under the properties once we rename this to phase 2. We're going to change the presentation of our phase filter. It's going to remain the same. It's going to remain previous and new, but we're going to change the phase to phase 2. As you can see, our room names have disappeared. Our rooms have disappeared because the rooms don't transcend up through the phases, but everything else has remained. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the set out of all these items, and I'm going to select all instances of my wall tags and remove, and then I'm going to remove the window and door tags as well. Okay, because this is now deemed all existing from the phase 2 perspective. So what we have here is one continuous wall. And for us to input our new room space here, we need to remove this wall between the two partitions internally. We also need to actually just input our canteen here. But what we want is the increase of an equal area of the footprint for the production space. So rather simply what we're going to do is we're going to take our 2 existing walls and we're going to copy them out by the known value. We're going to get a warning down here that says that highlighted walls overlap. That's okay because we're going to use our trim and extend command, and we're going to trim the wall back. can't cut instance out of the wall. We're going to delete that instance as well because that came along with the copied wall. So here we need to close out this space here. So I'm just going to copy this wall across. I'm going to take the corner there and I'm going to align that corner to the inside face of the partition wall. I'm going to press shift so it pulls square, and I'm going to click, and then I am literally just going to trim and extend this corner. So here we have the general shape of our proposed walls. We still have the issue though, we have to demolish one part of this existing wall. So I'm going to use the split element, and under split element I'm going to select the existing center line of the wall. Forgive how rough that looks. Here and here. And as you can see, it's actually now split into 3 distinct walls from the existing. Now the problem is this changes the existing wall into 3 distinct walls as well, but the presentation, once they're joined, remains the same. So here then we can use our hammer tool, the demolish tool, and we can select that, and that will remove that wall. The way the hammer tool works is it puts the item that you click back into the previous phase. So I don't always use the hammer. I have a tendency, if it's a multi-phase project like this, to not use the hammer, and what I do is I select the object and I assign the phase demolished to phase 2. This allows me to push the phase demolished at any given stage of a project back to any previous phase. So if this went on to phase 3 and we were extending this wall out here and removing this wall, I could actually push that back all the way to the demolition phase 1 if I wished. So I prefer the utility of actually selecting the object and changing the phase demolished here than just using the hammer, but it really is a matter of personal preference. So here you have the line of the existing slab. So we'll be creating a new slab here below to account for that as well. So we've opened up the space here, and what we're going to do is we're going to input a new basic wall to match the existing one here. So I'm going to press WA for wall. I'm going to look at the levels here. So this is going up to level 1, 4000. I'm going to take the top offset for minus 200 there, just to account for a roof build up above. And I'm going to take the center line of that and draw that down there. Now I want to include a double door for access between the administration space and the canteen space down here. So I'm going to press DR. And yet again, I'm on a single door here. So in this instance, I'm actually going to change to the node door type, which is the 1810 by 2110. And I'm going to set it like that. And I'm happy with the 400mm set out from the opening there. So what else do we need to do to close out the space? So we actually need to create the floor slab here, and we will draft it within here. So we're going to go to architecture, floor, and this is the same type of floor construction that we have for this existing floor. And what I'm going to use is I'm going to pick lines, and I'm going to pick the internal lines of the walls here. Now, if you want, you can lock these. So if the walls change, the floor footprint will change as well, but I'm not going to do it in this instance. I'm going to select the line for the existing floor, and I'm going to select this as well. And then I'm going to select the little nub. And I'm going to use the trim and extend TR command. And I'm going to just trim out all the lines. You will get warnings that say elements can't be joined. That's fine, just unjoin elements as you progress. And now you can see we have our little dog leg shape on the slab there. So we're going to finish the slab. Would you like the walls and floor? No. And there we can see we have a slab present here and here. Now we can modify and join our slabs so that they don't present together as one, but then we don't necessarily see that we have a proposed slab. So in this instance, I'm going to show that we actually have a join between a proposed and existing slab. So I'm going to undo that with Control Z. I'm going to use the line work tool to change the presentation of this line here. And I'm just going to set it to hidden line. And we're going to click it there. And I'm going to click again, because if you imagine the slab has a depth and you're seeing both top and bottom. So I'm going to click it again, and then I'm going to change the node for the presentation just to be the width that I need it for that space there. And as you can see now, we have the presentation of the join in the two slabs together. I'm going to put a little text note there, at 2.5 Arial, and I'm just going to say slab join location. So you'll notice now that we still do not have any rooms in this phase 2. So I'm going to go back to my phase 1 and I'm going to select all the rooms from phase 1 as shown. I'm going to press Ctrl C to copy to the clipboard, and then I'm going to go to my phase 2, and in phase 2 I'm going to align to current view, and you'll see we have all the existing views, but what's critically different is the size of the production space has changed. It's actually accounted for the new boundary of the walls because all the walls have a boundary condition for room bounding assigned to them. And then what we finally need to do is add one more additional room here for the canteen. So right now we're going to go and tag all the phase 2 rooms. So I'm going to press RT for room tag, and I'm just going to place them all approximately centrally there and keep them in alignment for presentation. You can see the production space has increased dramatically, and I'm going to just move that down to represent more central location for the actual slab. So under room, I'm going to change this to canteen, and that fundamentally is the presentation of the phase 2 works. I'm going to go around and just continue to tag the proposed wall types as I did in the previous phase. And I shouldn't have a wall. This existing wall doesn't have, this existing wall type that we're duplicating doesn't have a type mark assigned to it. So we're going to select the wall, we're going to go into our type properties, and we're going to change our type mark to B. And then we're just going to do our set out as we did previously. So we're going to go from wall faces individual reference, we're going to change that to entire walls. We're going to go into our options, we're going to select our openings, and we're going to select widths of the openings, and we're going to select intersecting walls and press OK. And we're just going to dimension out our proposed walls as such. And here we're just going to do this wall as well so that we get the proposed door for good measure. Something a little bit funny going on there, but we'll just ignore that for the moment. So now that we have our phase 2 presentation, what we're actually missing from the list to complete our final output is the phase 2 demolition works. So we're going to go back to our existing model, and we're going to duplicate our phase 1, our phase 1 drawing. Sorry, ignore that previous comment. We're going to duplicate our phase 2 drawing. So I'm going to take duplicate view, and I'm just going to press duplicate. I don't need to duplicate with detailing this time. And then in this instance, it's assigned to phase 2, and we're going to assign the phase filter to show previous and demolition. And as you can see the set out of the new door ope and the section of wall that we've removed. So I'm going to tag the wall in both instances, so that the contractor understands what he's removing. Then I'm going to dimension DI. I'm going to go from face to face. We're working from the outside, so I'm going to pick that point there. Now, and finally, I'm going to go into my phase 1 works, and I'm going to select all the rooms. No, I'm not going to do that. Sorry, apologies, I'm getting confused. I'm going to just press RT, and as you can see, we have our phase 2 rooms present and accounted for. In this instance, we're not going to tag this room or this room because they're the proposed ones that are extended. And as I said, the rooms don't transcend the phasing scheme. So all that remains to be done here is we go into our existing layout. We take our phase 2 demolition drawing. So I need to rename our drawing here, and we're going to say demolition. And I'm going to place this on the sheet, and it'll align to the previous iteration. And then I'm going to take our phase 2 works drawing and place it as such. And that is pretty much phasing in a nutshell. So if you have any questions on this, just feel free to like and leave a comment below. I'm going to follow up this video with another video, which is kind of a series of things to know about phasing and how it doesn't act the way it should in certain instances, and a couple of tips and tricks on how to kind of navigate some of the trickier elements of it. But in essence, phasing is all within the one model environment, unlike CAD, and you append a timestamp, a real-world construction timestamp, to the geometry and the demolished items as you progress through the project. That is the ideology behind how phasing works. So thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next one. I'll link the next video in the description below if you want to look at the tips and tricks video, so that you can just get a little bit more au fait with the functionality of it. Thanks a million, guys, and I'll see you again. Bye bye.